people of Reddit, what's the most NSFW thing you've witnessed in a public place? Story 1. The other day I saw a homeless individual standing on the curb of the busiest street in my town. He faced away from the street, pulled off his pants, bent over, slapped his ass, and started violently shitting. He kept spanking his cheeks as he pooped, then my light turned green. Thank God. Story 2. I work for a nursing home company, and during one of my visits last year the administrator and I caught one of the CNAs, 28F, having vigorous sex with one of the residents, 70M. She got fired, but continued dating him and would come visit, just to duck in his room. He was alert and oriented, so it was completely consensual. Wasn't much we could do, still happening to this day so I've heard. Story 3. In front of a dentist's office, a woman was face down in the pavement in front of an NSFW. Ambulance was there, as well as a few other people who worked in the office. I assumed she had been hit. Nope. She was lying down in an effort to keep her ex-husband, who was there with their daughter for an appointment, from driving the car and leaving. Father has custody. Mother was trying to take the child away. Someone inside was filling me in on all the details when an officer came and tried to get the woman up out of the parking lot. She struggled and managed to completely remove her clothing while kicking and screaming racial slurs at anyone who tried to stop her. She made it out all the way into a busy intersection bare ass naked before police caught her. They threw a blanket on her and put her in the back of the ambulance. My dentist also gave me a discount that day for having to see that. Story 4. In college, watched a guy slow jog naked from one end of the room to the other, right in front of the professor during a lecture. Dude was holding a giant stuffed pink penis above his head and screamed woo the entire time. The professor just kinda watched, asked us if we knew the guy afterwards, then went right back to the lecture. Had the guy waited another like 3 minutes, a group of visiting families would have gotten to experience it too. I'm mildly frustrated that didn't happen lol. Story 5. Work for WhatsApp. We see some super bizarre things. Lady comes through the body scanner and has an alarm on her pocket. Most people will pull out something innocuous like an ID/passport, credit card, napkins, money/change, etc. This lady wasn't any different. Had her passport in her pocket. This wasn't some grandiose groin/buttocks alarm requiring a bunch of invasive steps or anything. It was a simple take item out of pocket, pat it down to make sure that was it, check the passport, and they are on their way kind of thing. Most people will just say, whoops, forgot about that, and pull the item out and let us get them through to their flight. Not this lady. My partner asks this lady to remove the passport from her pocket and hand it to her. She flies into this primal rage, storms out of the body scanner back out to the property divesting officer, and proceeds to strip completely naked while screaming at the top of her lung, I don't have a ducking thing on me. Why are you trying to grope me? My partner and I, still standing on the other side of the body scanner, are not saying anything and are so confused by her words and behavior that all we can do is look at each other and ask what is happening right now. She missed her flight and got arrested for indecent exposure. So there's that lol. Story 6. The morning after the 4th of July in 2019 I had to work at 7 AM. Yeah, pretty bullshit I know. I stayed at my buddy's place half an hour out of town, so I left pretty early to make it. On the highway as you're starting to get into the city, I saw a guy walking in the grassy median of the 4-lane highway, 2 lanes per side. I remember thinking he looked pretty dirty, but had normal clothes on, and couldn't have been older than late 20s early 30s. Wow, he must have had a rough night, I thought. It was only 10 past 6 AM and he's walking down the highway home after the 4th. As I got closer I noticed he took a couple steps into the road toward me. Luckily I was in the far lane. My spidey senses freaked out, so I pressed my brakes and turned around to see him step back into the median before then going on a full sprint back into the road as the car behind me, in the inner lane, approached. He jumped into the car and flew at least 10 feet in the air and landed back in the inner shoulder of the road. The car was one of those box-looking cars or whatever, so it had a very aggressively angled windshield that must have made him fly so high. I pulled over and ran back. Not to the guy, but to the driver. That was an old man, terrified and shocked. Everyone else pulled over to the injured guy, but I kept the old man's back to the injured guy and talked to him. until the emergency workers arrived. I could only think to try and calm him down and tell him I saw it all and there's nothing he could do. I wasn't his fault, etc. I waited until I could give a police report and left. Still made it to work on time somehow and went about my day. I found out the guy died a week later in the hospital and never heard about it again until the old man's insurance called me to confirm what I saw. It was so out of the blue. I'll never forget those 30 minutes and I still see it crystal clear 4 years later. Story 7. Tied between a dead guy on the pavement at 7/11, a man pissing into a Ziploc bag on a bus, 2 people with their hands down each other's pants in an alley, and a guy jacking off through his pants in a cafe. I think the one that probably takes the cake though is a bunch of dudes having a contest late at night at a pub. They were trying to see how many $1 coins would fit in their foreskins. Story 8. I was 18 working at Walmart overnight while I waited for a job to open at the vac company I wanted to work at. Anyway, at about 2 hours after the bars close and the strippers start coming in like every night, one was particularly adamant that she had to try on her outfit, and since the changing rooms were locked she stripped down right in the aisle. Someone coined the code California Barbie, and apparently it happened quite a few more times after I left, to the point kids working there almost 20 years later have heard the story about code California Barbie. Story 9. I used to live in southern Alabama, which is basically a mosquito-filled sauna 8 months out of the year. I also enjoy disc golf, so I used to get up literally an hour before the sun came up just to be on the first hole at first light before it got too hot. One morning, in a heavily forested section of the course, I came across 2 people just straight up ducking on one of the tee pads. It appears they were having a late night and decided this section of the forest was secluded enough for that. I didn't say anything, just stood 20-ish feet away while they quickly put on clothes and ran off. Story 10. Someone tried to carjack me once. Was comical to. I got off a shift at the Cult of Walton and got in my truck. It was 10:30 p.m. I needed some gas, so I pull into the Murray gas. As I'm filling up with gas, this dude comes up asking for a ride to the post office again at 10:30 p.m. I tell him sorry, I'm not going that way, friend. He proceeds to pull open my door and a hand axe and a length of bloody rope. The rope was from deer hunting after I hoisted a buck up a tree to dress it. Okay, that sounds Norman Bates-ish. I was cleaning it to prepare to butcher it. Well, the guy looks at it and the gears are turning. I said, since you knocked it out, can you toss it in the tailgate? He looks back and there is blood clots and some tools. Eyes glanced into the back of my cab, seeing trash bags and that triple roll of duct tape. He looked at me and I replied, something wrong, friend. He bolted. Our security came up and they had already called the cops as they knew this guy was trying to flag someone, and they ran him off twice. Did have to explain the rope, but given the deer hair on the back and the photos I took, the officer was laughing way too hard. He took photos on his phone, a couple for the report, and all was well. Story 11. I once saw a woman have full-on diarrhea on a bus stop bench. There was literally shit everywhere on the bench, where other people are supposed to sit normally, and the smell was horrible. It was close to the hospital and I assumed maybe she was handicapped, but it was very terrible. Story 12. One time I was in Rocky Point as a kid. I think I was 15 or so. Anyways, it was probably 10 or 11 at night and the tide was way out, so me and my brothers grabbed flashlights to go check out tide pools. You gotta remember, this was before LEDs were everywhere. Flashlights kind of sucked back then. They actually had a little tiny incandescent light bulb, so we might got a good 20 or 30 feet of visibility out of them. So we are out walking around, looking for crabs and jellyfish, and whatever weird sea creatures might be stranded in the sand at night, and we come upon a strange creature, kind of writhing in the sand. We stopped, confused, not knowing what it was. Was it a huge sea turtle flipped on its back? Was it an injured sea lion? Whatever it was kind of creepy, and we weren't sure we wanted to get any closer. Finally, we said, duck it, and strode forward. Yeah, danger, you can go to hell. That's when I realized it was 2 middle-aged people ducking. Story 13. I was in front of a public school on a problematic zone. I had to pick up a friend of mine, and 2 girls walked out and hid behind a mural. Then another girl, which looked sad and had her clothes dirty, was bullied by the 2 girls from before. She didn't almost fight it, and they ripped her clothes off and left her on the ground. The people that were walking around did absolutely nothing. Unbelievable. I helped her and gave her my oversized hoodie and took her home. Her parents weren't home either. Well, another reality check for me, I suppose. I have her number and we are good friends now. Story 14. I was the person performing the NSFW deed. Went to a midnight showing of some random movie with a girl who wanted to be frisky with me. Neither one of us wanted to spend the $sign for a hotel room that we'd only use for a couple of hours, but the movie tickets were cheap and the movie wasn't popular. The back few rows were empty except for one guy in the row in front of us, several seats to our right. We had to be quiet and ignore him, since he kept looking at us rather than the movie. It was a great time. When the movie was over I had to go to the restroom real quick. As she waited for me in the hallway, that dude went up to her and asked her, "Are you and your husband still new liwats?" She laughed and said, "He's not my husband. We are only 18. I guess he was old fashioned, because she said he got a disgusted look and walked away. What difference should it have made for a year if we were just dating though? Story 15. I can't really say it was public, sorta. I was on a kayak trip down a river in me years ago. On the river trip there were several dock/park sites to stop and eat, or whatever. We encountered a couple that was just ahead of us. They had docked in this area that had a grill. We thought we would cook some hot dogs there. I climbed the stairs to see the couple that was ahead of us mid-coitus. He had her bent over the park bench. I went back to the dock and noticed her bikini top was still in their boat along with a disposable camera. This is where I will admit that I'm an asshole. I took their camera up and shot pics of them. Planted it back in their boat just after I took a pic of me wearing her bikini top. They had no idea until they had those pictures developed. Story 16. One time at Voodoo Donuts my cashier had a crop top so high you could see a little underboob. Cute and trendy, not a big deal. After checking us out she bent over perpendicular to us and her shirt scrunched up over her chest, revealing everything. She either didn't notice or was a good actor cause she handed me my receipt and didn't acknowledge it at all. I probably should have let her know so she didn't flash anyone else, but I was too shocked from the sudden 10/10 would eat donuts again. Story 17. Actually a few weeks ago, just came back from my trip to Iceland, New Jersey. We got a sailing boat, and as we were sailing, a big yacht happened to sail close to us. There were easily 30 people, all the women naked, some guys naked having shreks, and some just grabbing the women with their swimsuits on. I find it funny that we as men are so insecure compared to women, that they were all naked and men were just standing there, haha. Can't blame them, I would have been too afraid too. Story 18. My friend and I were in middle school and found a condom on the ground near a playground he lived by. We walked by it and hung out for a few minutes talking. We heard a lady scream and we were startled, so we turned around to look at what happened. The lady was apparently screaming at a toddler to put down the condom we found and walked by several minutes earlier. Story 19. I was like 8 when I watched two people trying desperately to duck without anybody finding out. They were sitting at a crowded picnic table with some friends. The girl was sitting on his lap with her skirt about as far up her back as his dick was up her ass. I saw those two danglers very clearly. They stared at me a moment. I stared at them, eyes wide, completely still except for the occasional spasm. I had a very hard time keeping myself still for a long time and still do, ball in hand as they watched in horror. I was no stranger to porn as a friend tried to get me to masturbate with them about 2 years prior. I just sat there, slowly smiling, completely unfazed, and then turned around like nothing happened. Pretty sure I scarred them for the rest of their lived, and I do hope I did. Story 20. A lady climbed on top of a shipping container near where I work, took her top off, was yelling mumbles. She started trying to open the shipping container that was locked, and when she couldn't she took a shit near the entrance. I'm not sure what happened after that. I left and didn't bother asking what happened. But the lady did come back and apply for a job while actually harassing some of my other coworkers. Story 21. Not the most NSFW I've ever seen, but because it was last week it stands out. I was at the laundromat and this 50-60 woman had her pants outstretched with one hand, and the other hand was scratching/rubbing hard and deep at her funky vagine. A good 20 seconds of shameless itching. She was looking inside her pants while doing it. Then she went straight to touching all the shit other people touch. There was a creepy old guy with her staring at me with his mouth open. Weird couple. Story 22. While riding in my mom's car maybe a couple of weeks ago, she mentioned how I missed seeing somebody take a shit on a sidewalk in the middle of the day. What I didn't miss out on back in maybe 2014 was a woman with her tits out at a bus station. Before that, there was a man on the bus, middle-aged, drunk as hell, and falling over and such. I still cringe at myself when I think about laughing in my own head. Story 23. My friend lived on the edge of a state park. It bordered 3 sides of her property, including a parking lot for those who were using the park. It became surprisingly common for people to commit crimes such as drug deals or sexual acts in this parking lot thinking they couldn't be seen. The house sits back from the road just enough it's easy to miss. However, if they'd turn around they'd notice a clear line of sight through the trees to the house's side balcony and porch. Most people never seemed to look, so we made a drinking game out of how many acts of fellatio we'd see in a given day, how much open-air penetrative shreks, and what kind of drugs would be sold. Story 24. My best friend baby father was shot 14 times at my other good friend's birthday party. Me and my friend were hiding in the bathroom in a stall. After there was no more gunfire, no more bullets flying everywhere, I ran out of the bathroom. In the corner of my eye I seen my friend's baby father laying there, blood everywhere. He was still alive somehow and trying to tell my friend, his girlfriend, he loved her and their son. Because he was shot so many times and in the jaw he couldn't really speak, he passed in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. It was horrible. A lot of us had to go to therapy after, and my friend has never been the same. It was a horrific night I will never forget. Story 25. I got pulled over by a state trooper while receiving roadhead. Apparently the trooper thought I was alone when he hit the red and blues, so when her head popped up, he clued in and asked me if she was performing a Shrek's act on me while I was driving. I said, "Of course not, officer." She was looking for the cigarette that she dropped down her shirt, which she had to remove to keep from getting a blistered boob. He asked if I was gonna stick with that story. I said, "I'm not sure yet, what do you think?" Story 26. Was driving home one night from work. Kind of late. Maybe midnight, close to 1 AM. Was on a curve going under an overpass that had a park nearby with a pedestrian walkway that lead up to the sidewalk. There was one cop with its lights flashing and yellow caution tape. I vividly remember seeing a hanging body from the pedestrian walkway railing. It was a fresh suicide. The area had regular homeless people and the town itself is known for its homeless population. Soon as I saw it my body went cold and I turned off my music that I was playing and drove the last 5 minutes back home in silence. Story 27. Alright, so I've been working at a drive-in theater for like 2 months now. We walk in on people ducking all the time, so I'll just give you my worst day. It has started to pour down rain as I was getting lights off and my umbrella wasn't doing shit. I was soaked head to toe. So many people were ducking with their lights on. Like 60% of the cars with lights on were ducking, including a 60yo with like a 20yo. This was at a kids movie too, which for some reason attracts the most people ducking all the time. Guys, stop ducking at kids movies. Stop ducking at movies in general. We know what you're doing. The only reason you didn't get caught is because we didn't want to knock on your door. Also, I saw a condom in the urinal while working the other day, which meant they went from ducking, kept the condom on, full of jizz, which I could unfortunately see while it was in the urinal, and walked all the way to the bathroom, and instead of using the trash can, they threw it in the urinal, where everyone can see it. Story 28. I live in Slovakia in a regional hub of a town, which is an industrial shithole. Think Detroit, before car industry left, so slightly better, and in Europe. The train station in here smells strongly of piss, and while the town has some nice places, the station is just awful, and it's the first thing you'll be at when coming home. I was returning from Norway after 4 months. The door on the train station opens, and the first thing That happens. A nearby drunk hobo on a wheelchair rolls a bit closer with his dick out, grumbles something incomprehensible and starts pissing on the pavement in front of the train station. A glorious fountain. Pissed all over himself too. First thought, I've missed this place. And then I just started laughing. Story 29. I was the accidental NSFW thing. Unexpected public exposure. Hadn't seen my girlfriend for like 2 weeks while she was in Italy. When she returned to uni, I threw her straight on my desk in my campus room. First floor room, with floor to ceiling window behind the desk. I ate her out till she came, then proceeded to go to Pound Town without break. She ripped the ducking drapes behind my desk off the rail by accident while clenching them, and thus provided a show to 100 plus horde of freshers coming out of the teaching center across my dorm on welcome week. My first instinct was to duck, NGL, but I was so close to coming to that I didn't. I came to the tune of howls, lulls and applause from outside. I still have mixed feelings about, as I normally hate the idea of strangers seeing me but naked. Story 30. One time, after getting off of work on Fremont Street in Vegas, I was waiting for the bus as usual. A homeless lady who was clearly out of it came up to me and started screaming and trying to spit in my face. She then proceeded to lift up the only thing she was wearing, which was a shit-stained long white tee, nothing else, and flashed me while screaming, "Look at it." I didn't even know how to react, so I just told her to go away. Never seen grandma boobs and coochie before. Don't think I ever want to again. Story 31. When I was 13, me and my dad went to Mazatlan, Mexico. But we did not fly there. We drove from Redding in Northern California. All the way there, I even drove a little bit. But those skinny roads with no shoulder were not insane, seeing all the buses and at semis with huge cattle guards like the old trains. Because they have no fences to keep in, they made me not want to drive. Once we got there, we went to the outdoor market, and I glanced to my left and I see half of a horse hanging in the meat store. That was shocking to see. Story 32. My partner and I were once driving back to my place in the middle of the day. A car was pulled over on the side of the road. This was a semi-rural area, and in the passenger seat there was a man sitting there with a pained look on his face. In his lap was a tiny woman, obviously grinding on him, a look of pure evil pleasure on her face. Needless to say, we still laugh about that nowadays. Story 33. San Francisco is a smorgasbord of NSFW behavior. On any given day you might find yourself on Muni next to a dude wearing nothing but a dog collar, a cock ring and his Nikes, while outside the bus, some unhoused person shits in the middle of a crowded sidewalk. I think the most obnoxious sight was when I had a desk next to a ground level window next to a parking lot that was popular with the local campers, who, God bless have the same urges as the rest of us. Nothing like looking up from your work and taking in the majesty of a toothless hobo gagging on his or her partner's freakish cock. Story 34. Well, I guess I have a story. I work out pretty frequently, but have bad social anxiety at the gym. So I work out between 12 to 1 in the morning. And let me tell you, go to your local Planet Fitness and you see some ducking wild stuff. Normal day, just got off work. Head to the gym. And I get out of my car, and there's a literal trail of shit from the parking lot to the front door of the gym. I walk inside, and there's a homeless man wearing just underwear pleading with the attendant to let him use 2 showers to clean himself up. The attendant keeps refusing and saying he's not a member and can't use the facility. All while this is happening, I'm just waiting to check in, and the smell is so bad. At this point it's a puddle of shit water at this guy's feet. I go around the homeless man so I can just scan my badge and check in. I asked if I technically say the homeless man is my guest, is he allowed to use the shower, and the worker didn't really have a way to explain, so he said yes. I went on with my workout and the homeless man was able to use the shower and clean up. I gave him a spare pair of Adidas pants to change into whenever he was finished. Never saw him again. The next morning I realized I left my wallet, so I drove back to the gym at 8 to 9 am. All the shit trails and shower were cleaned up, but God, the smell was still there for at least that morning and faintly when I returned the next night for another workout. Story 35. Couple going raw on my walk at around 2 am from downtown. They were ducking on a park bench, doggy, both having pants down to their ankles. I was gonna take a vid and send it to my friends, but the closer I got, the more disgusted I felt and thought no one should have to see this. A couple possibly in their mid to late 30s, she was best over and he was standing up. I pass them and walk few feet past tree and there's this dude sitting on another bench, pretending like he doesn't see anything, but using the tree as cover to sneak glances. Story 36. Waiting at a tram stop opposite a large hotel at about 11 PM at night. People start mumbling and pointing at the hotel, so I look up, and there's a naked blonde spread eagled against a floor-length window about 6 floors up being railed from behind. She even waved a couple of times. After about 5 minutes she dropped to her knees and gave everyone a side-on view while she blew the guy. When he finished on her, people whistled and clapped. Technically they weren't in public, but they were certainly performing for the public. Story 37. Many years ago I met up with a girl, drinks and a hookup. We did drinks at a pub, then decided to walk back to my place via the harbor, walk through a park. Things escalated before we made it home, and we had eventually moved off the main path to somewhere where we thought we were well hidden and in our own private outdoor playground. This was also relatively late in the evening at this point, shortly before midnight. Shortly she was bent over against a tree branch, skirt up around her hips, panties around her ankles, and me giving it my best shot behind her. We were both very into it and thought we were being super discreet too, until an old dude walking his dog passes on the path we'd not noticed 5 feet away. He had a massive grin on his face, gave me a wink and a nod, and carried on his way without actually saying a word. Myself and acquaintance burst out laughing and quickly cleaned up before heading home to finish off an actual private. Story 38. I was at a local park with my friend's kids I was babysitting. There were 4, the youngest being about 4 or 5. She was going down the slide and not paying attention and just running around, as kids do. I think one of her shorts legs got moved over and maybe showed a little cheek. I mean, she was sliding down a slide. She felt the wedgie and fixed it. Jay didn't think anything of it, you know. But from next to me about 15 feet I start hearing this dude making weird huffs. I look over and he's sitting on his bench weird, and I can't really see his arm moving, but there was motion. I was behind him. He's just stating forward, and I look over and just see the opening to the slide, and it takes my mind to put 2 and 2 together. I was shocked and kinda just blankly staring at him like no ducking way he's doing what I think he's doing. All of a sudden I see him sit still for a second all tense and then give a tiny shiver. I was like WTF. Oh hell nah. But I was still like shocked, like my mind couldn't believe it. And before I could pick up a phone to record him or call the cops, I was scared, since I was so close that if I did he would just bolt before anyone came. He gets up and calls his kids, one of which looked to be the same age, and then is like, let's leave. And like that they were ducking on. And I sat there in shock and disbelief and total disgust and rage, and I couldn't make my body move. To this day it still bothers me, especially because I know that little girl personally. I never told the parents because I didn't want to shock them or keep them from letting the kids play at the park. The kids didn't see anything, so thankful they weren't traumatized because of it. I also didn't want to wreck his children's whole world and cause a scene or get arrested for assault if they couldn't find proof. So I've just kept it my dark little secret full of regrets. And I know I shouldn't punish myself because it honestly happened so fast, and I know there is nothing that guy could have done. But at the same time, IDK. Before anyone says anything, I may have been stuck in place, but I know 100% if that bastard would have started walking towards the playground I wouldn't have hesitated to intercept. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more videos.